The first thing I thought about the Rancid Ranch was the smell. It did smell like animals, dirt, and mud, but the smell wasn't rancid nor rotten. Maybe it was only alliterative or metaphorical? I wasn't sure, but smells don't usually mean a positive metaphor. No one ever says the situation smells to mean that it smelled good. They said it smelled because it smelled like a bad situation. The next thing I noticed about the ranch was the corn acting as a buffer around the entire ranch. There were no entrances nor exits as far as I could see, even where I came from. Logically, there had to be a way back, but none as far as I could see. They were going to make it look like my choice between truth and safety was indeed a one-way trip. I couldn't see Adansi anywhere, but I could see a lot of people in the Rancid Ranch. Not as many as the fairgrounds, but definitely a lot of people, and even a fair amount of children. I saw three areas I could go to: the monster menagerie on the left, the mythical market forward to where I was, and then the cryptid corrals to my right, all of which looked incredible, but deciding to stick to a systematic approach, I walked left to the monster menagerie. The first area had a few children looking down into a small wave pool. It was waist height and everyone was looking down into the water with rapt attention. Mystified, I approached the water, worried about what I was going to see. Anything that could catch the focus of children was usually something to worry about. However, when I peeked into the water to see what it was, I smiled. What was swimming in the water was roughly the size of a stingray, and its skin looked smooth. It had four flippers and a long neck, and an almost dog-like head with a stubby tail. Plesiosaurs, little Loch Ness monsters that loved being pet and enjoyed all of the attention. Eager, I went up to the pool and reached my hand into the water. Feeling the indeed smooth and cool skin of the plesiosaurs, I giggled giddily from the glee. Every child dreamt of petting and meeting dinosaurs and other extinct creatures, and here I was, actually petting one as it swam by, enjoying the scratches from my fingers. It was just like stingrays, except stingrays didn't have puppy dog eyes and didn't lift their heads out of the water to gently nuzzle into your stomach while you pet them. "Pretty plesiosaurs," Adansi said next to me. I wasn't sure when she got there, but she arrived with a bag of dried shrimp and handed me a handful. "Feed one shrimp at a time to one plesiosaur at a time. It's their second favorite snack," she said. "Foolish fingers are their first favorite," she whispered as I dangled a shrimp from between my two fingers. I quickly laid my hand out flat and fed the shrimp one at a time to the puppy-eyed plesiosaur in front of me. The barks it let out were more seal-like than dog-like, but I could tell they were happy with me. "Met a friend and a friend met you. So many monsters to meet in the menagerie, so few friends to flee," Adansi said. Her shrimp was now gone, and my own disappeared soon after. "Want to see the jackalopes? They're crepuscular. They're most active around dawn and dusk. Dusk and dawn. They're like mosquitoes, but they're cuter than mosquitoes. They will cut more than mosquitoes, too," she giggled, leading me away from the plesiosaurs to first the paper towels to dry off, and then to a large fenced-off area. In the grassy fenced-off area, I could see many rabbit-like creatures. They were fluffy and larger than most rabbits. I could see them lay on their side and showing their bellies with their legs kicked out, their antlers lying in such a way that they didn't collide with any other jackalopes. The hunter at the gate told us the rules when meeting the jackalopes. "Be careful of their antlers. If they feel threatened, they will try to gore you. If they jump into the air, that's normal. It means that they're happy. Sit down near them and let them approach you and sniff you. If you reach out a hand and they don't get closer, that's okay. Give them time and they will want to get closer to you, he explained before opening the first gate and then the second gate into the small, grassy area. Adansi sat down and I sat next to her. She held a finger up to her lips and reached out her hand to the flagerdoot of jackalopes in the corner. A group of rabbits is called a fluffle, and a group of jackalopes is called a flagerdoot. One of the small kits approached Adansi's hand. Its horns were barely nubs as it approached Adansi. Its white fur stood up until it sniffed Adansi's hand and it relaxed. Adansi picked up the little lagomorph and gently patted it while she whispered to me, I love all bunnies, and all bunnies love me. I even have a special treat, she said, gently dragging a bowl over while she removed a flask from her pocket. The hunter scowled at her until she handed it to him. The hunter opened the flask, sniffed the liquid before handing it back to Adansi. That's fine, but don't spoil them too much, Marquess of Madness, he said as Adansi filled the metal bowl with an amber fluid. Adansi whispered to me again as the small kit hopped off her lap to start drinking the fluid with the other bunnies. Lavender herbal tea. Special treat. You want some? She asked, this time offering me a sealed glass bottle of tea. I opened it and drank it. Sure enough, despite being in her pocket for who knows how long, the tea was still cold and delicious. Lavender was one of my favorite scents. It reminded me of my mother and how she would add it to her drinks. I felt Adansi's hand rest on my back. Don't worry. They'll come to you. Be patient and they'll find their way to you. It isn't your fault, no matter what anyone says, she said in a solemn, serious way. I didn't know that Adansi could speak. While I sat there wondering if it was going to be worth responding, before Adansi continued, I'll help you hold one, she said. I then realized she was talking about the horned rabbits, and not something else. Adansi reached down to the small kit and picked it up. Handing it to me, he barely filled my cupped hands, and even then he was lighter than I expected. He was more fluff than anything. Still, though, seeing those big, beautiful eyes looking up at me, I saw the horned rabbit yawn big before flopping onto his side in my hands. I gently lowered him to my lap and petted the sleeping kit. Don't worry, he'll wake up soon. Some people think it's good luck to have a kit catnap on them. They say it means you're so good with animals that they'll consider you safe to sleep on. And when the others see you safe with their kit, well, look, she said, pointing at the jackalopes in the corner. They all approached me cautiously. They sniffed me and the kit sleeping on my lap before they decided to lay down next to me. They flopped down on their sides, showing me their bellies and their legs kicked out. That means they like you. Don't touch their bellies, though, Adansi told me. I listened to her, but I still gently pet the sleeping kid on my lap. I don't know how long we were sitting there, but after a while, the kid woke up and hopped off my lap, and the other horned rabbits parted from me. That was fun. What else is in the menagerie? Adansi asked, getting up and brushing the hay and grass off of her dress and offering her hand to me. I took her hand and stood up. After that, we left the horned rabbits and traveled deeper into the menagerie. The monsters here weren't petable, but just as fascinating. In one aquarium, a hunter with an anchor tattooed on his chest told us about the surgeon crabs inside. Their legs were over 2 meters long, but their claws didn't end in pincers, but a scalpel made out of keratin. We watched through the glass as the large arthropod delicately cut through the seagrass and lifted the cut blades to its jaws and snack on the grass. It was fascinating to watch the surgeon crabs eat, but we soon moved on. We soon made it to the section of the menagerie that had empty exhibits. The first one I saw had a missing plate of glass up front with a placard in front of it mentioning it as the Manticore. Despite the rocks and sand inside, it didn't feel right. It took a moment before I realized what it was. The exhibit didn't smell like it had an animal inside of it. Even the cleanest of animals had a smell, but the Manticore exhibit didn't smell like a large cat, nor any animal at all. Of course, the Manticore being released was just another part of the haunted house. There never was a Manticore inside of that exhibit. Now, a bit more confident, I checked out the next exhibit. It did indeed look like the northern forest, and my confidence wavered when I smelled the exhibit beyond the broken glass. It smelled rancid, like a tarantula's terrarium. Deep inside of the case, beyond the trees, I could see a funnel of webs. A spider's den. I glanced down into the spider's den, and indeed, I could see something moving. I couldn't tell for sure what it was down there, but I could see 8 points where something was reflecting back at me. Adansi grabbed my hand and whispered to me, "Leave him alone. He's on break. It's rude to interrupt people when they are on break. They only get 15 minutes and he works hard," Adansi said, leading me away from the case. Now led to the furthest exhibit I saw. It was indeed covered with a red curtain marked "Coming Soon," but I could see the corner of the plaque peeking out. Curious, I ducked beneath the velvet rope and parted the curtain just a little to read the plaque in full, to see what it was beneath the curtain. Adansi stayed on her side of the velvet rope, admiring the texture of the velvet rope in her hand. The plaque was golden and read, "Werewolf, Homo sapiens canis, native to Europa, diet carnivorous," which was unsettling enough to begin with, but what was inside of the exhibit was even more disturbing. The case was very small, barely big enough for a person to stand up straight, but not enough for them to stretch. The light source inside of the case was designed to simulate moonlight, so the poor creature would have to remain in wolf form indefinitely. And then most of the space in the case was taken up with chains and shackles. I couldn't tell what the metal was for sure, but I could tell that the shackles had sharp pins made of highly polished metal, most likely silver. So if the wolf tried to escape or even move too much, it would be pierced with poisonous metal, causing great pain and suffering. This didn't match any of the other exhibits here, but it did explain what Mr. Romero was trying to trade for at the docks. A werewolf would have the advantage of being a very popular exhibit, and then he could use the lycanthrope's teeth or claws to make even more werewolves. He would have no shortage of new guests, and if a few went missing, then that was the price he was willing to pay for his own fame and fortune. That is, if he had the werewolf. The fact it wasn't in the exhibit proved that he didn't capture the creature. So if he didn't have the werewolf, where was it? I peeked back behind the curtain to check for Adansi, and sure enough, she disappeared somewhere else. So I took the moment to consolidate what I did know and what I wanted to know. The fairgrounds was full of folks, fleeing from someone or something. The corn maze was acting as a buffer between the Rancid Ranch and the fairgrounds. For what exactly is unclear, but Robert Romero was making deals at the damned docks to trade for supernatural creatures and monsters. Whoever he was trading with, they were, presumably, dangerous. Were they the same people that the fairgrounds were fleeing from? Most likely. So now it was just a matter of figuring out who he was trading with. I could finish exploring the ranch to see if there was maybe something here that would tell me more. And I also had to see if I could find the werewolf. There was something about the backstory. It wasn't known what Robert offered, nor what was offered to him. What was known was that he cheated who he traded with. So now I did know what was offered to him, a werewolf. But he had no animals left to offer. So what did he offer in exchange for the werewolf? And if he cheated them, that means what he offered he didn't deliver to them. That was also likely going to be in the Rancid Ranch too. If whoever he was dealing with is still searching for what is offered, maybe I can find it and offer it to them. Especially if he was making deals with the shepherd on the docks. Now, full of possibilities, I pulled out the compass and checked the needle. Knowing the fastest way possible offered a few possibilities, but at least it was a way forward. The needle pointed towards the mythical market. Deciding that was the next place I was going to check out, I realized the needle was wavering, even though I wasn't moving. Whatever the quickest way to the next part of the labyrinth was, it was moving. The mythical market looked like every other open-air market I had seen before. Easy shade structures set up and portable tables while merchants hawked their goods. None of the merchants interested me, but there were quite a few interesting things. And following the needle, I made it to the quiet part of the market. Here, the sellers all eyed me, hoping I would go to their table, but none tried to draw my attention as I checked the compass, which pointed down at a table where there was no one at. There was a shade structure, a table, and even sticky tablecloth on the table. But there was no seller, no sign, and no sellables. But still, my compass needle pointed at the table, even when I tried to go around the table. So instead, I decided to check underneath the table. When I lifted the tablecloth, I saw a small wolf pup with an iron collar whimper while hiding underneath the table. Not sure what to do, I lifted my hand out for the wolf pup to sniff. Sure enough, it got closer, sniffing my hand before nuzzling into my hand. So I gently scratched his head while the pup approached even closer. Now I had a clear view of its collar. I saw that it had a key on the hook of its collar, blocking the view of the dog tag. I removed the key of immaculate iron and read the name carved into the tag. There was no address, only a name on the tag. Richard. I looked into the pup's sad eyes and I understood. He was the attraction, and he was the creature offered in trade. Robert Romero offered his own son to the dark dealers in the damned docks in exchange for a werewolf. They gave him the werewolf in the form of his son, and Robert still built that case to imprison and shackle his own son. He would sacrifice his family for his fame and fortune. I pet Richard's head, who nuzzled my hand holding the key. At first, I tried to offer it back, before I realized that he wanted me to keep the immaculate iron key. As soon as my fingers closed around the key, Richard bolted away. I quickly checked my compass to see if it would still point at him, but instead it pointed at the key in my hand. At least until I set it in my pocket. Then it pointed towards the cryptid corral. I looked where Richard ran off, and I signed sorry. Even if it was just a story, it was tragic to know your own family member would sell you out for more fame and fortune. I continued to make my way down to the cryptid corral. I didn't notice anyone else, but I did notice the longest line was for the biggest corral. The concrete corral was built to be 5 meters tall, and they were big enough gaps to peer through. So I found one far away from everyone else and peered into the corral. Inside, I could see several large redwoods. There were also large bones on the ground, far too large for any human or creature that I knew about. While I ran through every legend I could think about, I felt the ground shake. I didn't hear it, but I most definitely felt it shake the earth. I eyed eagerly through the gap in the corral and watched in awe as the king of the cryptid corral stepped forward. She was very large and lightly feathered. Her feathers were light gray and brown, while she stood on 2 powerful legs that had 3 very sharp toes. Her yellow, bird-like eyes focused on us beyond the corral. Those eyes, they were far smarter than any creature of its size had a right to be. She stood 4 meters tall, and her 2 arms were vestigial with only 3 sharp claws on it. Her teeth were what brought in the most attention. Her mouth closed, and she looked tight-lipped and almost adorable. But when the large carnivore opened her mouth to yawn, a deep, almost imperceptible sound could be heard, but all of her teeth were sharp and serrated, far larger than any steak knife I had seen. After her yawn, she picked up one of the large bones and threw it to another part of her corral before she walked over to pick it up again. The Tyrannosaurus rex was playing fetch with its bony leftovers, similar to what wild wolves would do in the woods. I watched in awe of this creature for a while before I consulted my compass again. It was pointing towards where the horses were kept. I glanced one last time towards the primeval predator before waving goodbye to her. I couldn't be sure, but it almost looked like the dinosaur waved back towards me as well. I made my way to where the horses were kept, and I could see the pale horse kept all alone in the middle of the paddock, looking despondent and morose while it stared down at the ground. I didn't know why there was no one around this horse. There was a basket of apples near the edge of the paddock, so I picked up a red, almost squishy apple as I held it out towards the pale horse. The horse, interested in what I was offering, slowly trotted over to where I was. The sun had set a while ago, and the full moon was hidden behind the clouds. Wait, that didn't make any sense. The full moon was 2 weeks ago? The moon should barely be visible, if at all visible. So why was tonight a full moon? And not so long ago, the Tyrannosaurus was in full view of the sun and easy to see. But when I visited the mythical market and the monster menagerie, both were in twilight. What was happening to time here? It was like the shadow puppets all over again, but the light and shadows kept reversing. The pale horse gently nuzzled its head against my hand when I became aware of where I was once again. I smiled up at the horse and held my hand out flat so the pale horse could eat the apple. Smiling from it, I quickly grabbed another apple as I watched the apple's red juice drip from the apple's fragile skin. I offered the apple to the pale horse as the clouds parted and revealed the moon's light coating the pale horse. In the moonlight, the pale horse had no skin. It was skeletal and made clacks as it moved. Every twitch, every clop, and every twist of the head made the horse clack like it was made out of wood. The horse's deep blue eyes stared into my own, not with sadness or loneliness, but pure rage. If this horse escaped this paddock, it would wreak havoc upon the entire world. Whatever the gentle beast was, when the moon came out, it was something else entirely. The flat teeth of the horse crunched on the apple I was holding. Except in the moonlight, it wasn't an apple. Apples didn't have a fleshy texture that reminded me of cold pork. Apples didn't pulse in your hands while you held them. Apples didn't release red metallic smelling juice when chewed on by a skeletal horse. I quickly ran from the pale horse as I heard the horse's whinny follow me all the way down to the docks. When I finally calmed down, I made my way into the damned docks. The entrance to the docks was foggy and dark. A single wooden sign above read "Damned Docks" in red graffiti. On the wooden pole there was a map of the docks. Unlike the corn maze, there were no portable mazes to take with you. You had a single maze to memorize before you went in. I looked it over, and I believe I had a way through the docks. The compass also pointed deeper into the docks, so I was on the right path. I stepped onto the docks, and once I passed the sign, it felt like I stepped into a new world. It was cold and foggy. Every few meters, the tall streetlights lit the docks below, but they flickered, and the feeling of danger didn't pass. Still, I made the assertion to be brave. I continued where I thought the right path was. Checking my compass, it seemed to concur with me. I did notice that the splashing beneath me was following, slowly. So, already whatever was in the water noticed me, and it was following me. I made my way to a T-junction, and on a hunch, I stopped. Sure enough, the splashing continued. It went left, and when I checked my compass, it said to go to the right. Still, though, that didn't make a lot of sense. According to what I memorized about the map, left would have been the way I would go. Still, I would follow the compass. Maybe I made a mistake. I followed the dock. There were no turns, no twists, and no other options. Just a straight path forward to something that was blocking my path. I approached cautiously when I saw it was an old shipping container blocking my path. The locks long since rusted off, but the name of the shipping company was still visible in the carved white paint. Count DeVille's Shipping. The name rang a distant bell in my head, like I heard the name in a story that I heard a long time ago. I checked my compass. It pointed into the shipping container. Now worried, I pulled on the door, which led into the shipping container. Inside the container, I could see the distant light of the far side. Sure enough, there was a way through, but there was a big unknown. What was inside this container? Judging by the context, this was the shipping container that was opened and caused the entire damned docks to be abandoned. So naturally, I couldn't see what was inside. Whatever was inside, it likely left a long time ago. It would have no reason to be here all this time when it had an entire world to investigate. But in the dark, anything could be there. And I did my best to reassure myself. If it seemed like anything could be in there, then it could just as easily be nothing. That is easy to forget when you are in situations where anything can happen. Nothing can also happen. And in fact, nothing was far more likely than any monster that I could dream up. My imagination and myself were the worst things that I could possibly face. So that would also mean that whatever I did, I would actually face in there, that it was something I could face. I walked forward into the darkness and followed the distant light. I heard dry crunching under my feet as I stepped forward. Twigs, just twigs, I told myself as I stepped forward, and I kicked something round, light, and hollow forward that clanged against the side of the container. Just a ball, that's all it was. It wasn't what it felt like. They made it out of hard plastic to feel like that. I told myself as I made my way forward, but I heard chains rattle inside of the container. They were just chains. Nothing had to be attached to them. They would just hang them up and the breeze would rattle them. At least, that's what I told myself until I realized the chains rattling were behind me, gradually getting closer. I paused and listened, and the chains rattled for another moment before stopping. Something was inside of the shipping container with me, and it was stalking me. Now, with no illusion of control, I ran as fast as I could for the distant door. The chains rattled quickly behind me, and I could hear the pants of whatever was following behind me. It was also sprinting, and this was my only chance. I made it to the distant door, and I turned to slam the door behind me and slid the handle into place. But in that split moment of trying to close the door and succeeding, I saw what followed me. It rushed forward on both of its hands and feet. Its arms and legs were shackled in that same shiny silver I saw in Richard's prison. This didn't resemble a puppy. This was a humanoid wolf. The mouth was full of foam, and the claws were razor sharp and long as pencils. The fur was scarred from many battles and colored gray and white. Its yellow eyes had no intelligence, no mercy, and no control. Only raw, rabid rage reigned over the wolf-man's mind. Even if he was human, I would be terrified of his eyes. I slammed the door in enough time, and the handle slammed down for me to hear the rabid werewolf pound against the door. The door held strong, but I still consulted the compass and made my way quickly away from the werewolf. When I made it to another crossroads, I finally let myself breathe. The docks were certainly a lot scarier than the corn maze. After my heart settled, I checked my compass again. It pointed forward for a minute, but then I watched it change to the right. Why would it be pointing to a new place? Either there was something in the damn docks I needed to escape, or the docks themselves were changing. The dark thought inside me pushed aside. I followed the compass, and I eventually made it to where I could see a figure sitting in the halo of the streetlight above. I approached slowly. It looked like a normal person sitting on the ground, but he was chained to the light above. His leg was shackled, and I could hear his whimpering while I looked at him in the darkness. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I promise. I'll be good. I didn't mean for that to happen. Please, don't leave me out here to die, the boy said. He was older than I was, but I could see tears streaking down his face, and my heart broke for him. I realized the point of this was to make me question if he was worth saving or not, or maybe question what he did to make him worth tying up the damn docks. Maybe second guess myself and assume he was a threat to me and have me run past him. After all, the compass needle pointed past him, so he wasn't the fastest path. But like Adansi said, it didn't point out the safest nor bestest paths, only the fastest. And I was not going to leave a child out on the damned docks to die. I approached him and checked out his shackle. His tear-stained eyes stared at me, not sure if I was real or not. Now closer to him, I could see that despite his pale skin and dark hair, both of his eyes were golden, and he looked at me like he couldn't believe I was really there. Please, 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 let me go. I promise I'm a good boy. I just need the key. Do you have the key? He asked tearfully, as I remembered the key of immaculate iron. I removed it from my pocket and tried it on the shackle on his left leg. Sure enough, it fit and his leg was released. His leg now freed, he started crying out of happiness. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm Michael, the mouser. My friends call me Eel. Where do you want to go? I can lead you back to the Rancid Ranch, he offered me, only for me to shake my head, and he smiled. The smile looked like it belonged to a Cheshire cat that was told to go to hell. Oh, you must want the crooked cemetery. Michael's golden eyes lit up, practically glowing in the dark night, while he let out a small noise that almost sounded like a purr. Well, my dear savior, some go this way, some go that way, some go hither, and some go dither, he said, pointing down all four ways of the crossroads. My compass only confirmed that all four ways were equally the quickest way. But since I don't like dealing with the Page of Wands, what most mousers call the shepherd, so myself, I have a shortcut, he said, standing up and leading me into the dark where I came from. He took only a few steps and then he pointed to something I didn't see. A stairway leading under the docks. Everyone tries to think through their problems. No one ever thinks about going under their problems. That's why leopards lose to sloths, Eel said, leading me down under the docks. Was everyone I was going to save be this strange? Still, though, the path beneath led to a dock underneath the dock. It wasn't very long, maybe 10 meters, before it led to an iron gate. The metal words above read, Crooked Cemetery. Now, this is your last chance to turn back, hero. I could just as easily take you back to the Rancid Ranch or even the Feral Fairgrounds. But know this, if you stop your hero's journey here, you will never get to go home changed. You will never get your gift to the goddess, and you will never hear the call to action again. So once again, You choose. He gestured to a rickety rowboat next to the dock, and I looked at the gate, and instead I pointed towards the gate. He nodded and sat himself in the boat and began to row. Well, you made your choice and I made mine. And oh, just so you know, that thing in the container that killed everyone on the docks? It wasn't a river, Mama. Werewolf, vampire, mermaid, nor disease. It was me. His eyes flashed bright in the fog as he rode into the darkness. His voice is still lingering in the air. They all died because they left me chained up. Eel's voice echoed, leaving a shiver to run down my spine. I looked at the immaculate iron gate. These gates were designed to keep out both Fae and undead. Fae can't touch iron, and corruption withered at the touch. And the undead were unable to break the metal of this metal. I looked down at the key in my hand. It looked like it would fit the lock. I tried it, and sure enough, the lock opened and the gates creaked open. I stepped through, and the salty air turned to the smell of freshly rained on grass. The ground was still foggy, and in the distance I could see still shapes. Likely the gravestones. I turned to see the gate I stepped through, and sure enough, it was gone. The only thing I could see was the foggy ocean and the sand beneath my feet. There would be no going back here. I would make it through the cemetery and then into the secrets of the pumpkin house. I checked my compass, and with my heading, I began my trek into the creepy, crooked cemetery.